The ancient world could often be a dangerous and violent place, as seen in my video on the people of ancient Britain and their ritual of the Wicker Man. Violence and extreme violence were everywhere in the past, so much so that it was often considered merciful to simply behead a condemned individual rather than subject them to an agonizing torture before their death. When it came to punishments for crimes, suffering was very much the rule as opposed to the exception. For most, if not all, of human history, those condemned to death were meant to suffer greatly. The Romans were fond of nailing live convicts to wood, a practice they inherited from the Persians. Then again, the Romans also loved to watch convicts and gladiators die at the hands of wild beasts in the confines of the arena, so perhaps they are slightly overrepresented in this topic. Prisoners of the ancient world could be boiled alive, broken on the wheel, slowly sawn in half, or tightly bound and fed to insects, and that was just scratching the surface. Crime and punishment in the ancient world were very different concepts to those that we understand today. Parties could be guilty without proof and sentenced without appeal. Witnesses could be bribed or intimidated, and evidence could be completely disregarded. Sometimes the condemned individual was guilty of no crime at all, but rather simply fell victim to the whims of a tyrannical and sadistic authority. In this video, we will briefly examine one of history's most brutal methods of executions. This is the story of the Brazen Bull. This is the Retelling. In the 1st century BC, while Julius Caesar and Augustus were busy reforming the known world, a learned and well-respected scholar and historian on the island of Sicily was just completing his life's work. An enormous tome that contained myths and legends, tales of history, geography, and more. The man was called Diodorus Siculus, a Greek living in the fast and changing times of the budding Roman Empire. Diodorus called his book Bibliotheca Historia, which means historical library. Considering that the tome included at least 40 different books ranging from myths and legends to geography and history, it isn't hard to imagine coming up with a name like that. It is in the pages of this massive tome that the author details the alleged origins of the Brazen Bull. Diodorus writes of a time long before his own, when city-states were ruled by kings whose names are either lost to time or shrouded in myth. The author tells of an evil and wicked tyrant, a king called Phalaris, who rules over the city of Acragas, modern-day Agrigento in Sicily. Phalaris was a wicked man through and through, a schemer and a sadist. He ruled over his people with fear and intimidation. No one was safe from the wrath of the unpredictable king. One minute he would have his most trusted advisors gifted with gold and treasures, and the next minute he might order them to be thrown off of a cliff to their deaths. It was a wicked, dangerous world. Seeking safety and stability in this dangerous world, an Athenian inventor called Paralus came up with a way to ingratiate himself into the court of the violent, unpredictable tyrant. Paralus was a creative inventor and a skilled artisan. If he could build something useful to Phalaris, he might not only ensure his own survival, he might also win for himself a comfortable place at court. The invention Paralus came up with was this: the Brazen Bull. A hollow chamber in the shape of a bull, this bronze construction was meant to house a condemned prisoner, while a slow fire was lit beneath them, and they were slowly cooked alive. Inside the bull, a series of pipes and horns were meant to amplify the screaming of the condemned soul and simulate the screaming sounds of an enraged bull. It was a sinister, sadistic creation that was meant for a sinister, sadistic man. According to legend, Paralus, seeking favor with the tyrant, presented the bowl to Phalaris, explaining all of its secrets and hidden features. Eagerly, the inventor pointed out the pipes and the horns, as well as the holes in the nostrils and the ears that would emit a sour smoke as the victim inside was cooked alive. In describing the effects of the Brazen Bull, Paralus is said to have remarked on the condemned, "His screams will come to you through the pipes as the tenderest, most pathetic, most melodious of bellowing." It could be that the tyrant didn't believe the inventor's boasts, or maybe he didn't like the sales pitch. Maybe he wanted to see the invention work for himself, or maybe he just didn't like Paralus very much. In any case, Phalaris ordered the inventor himself to be shut inside his creation, and a fire to be lit beneath him. Without a trial or an appeal, the inventor Paralus was quickly bundled into the cramped confines of his bronze bowl, and the latch was shut, sealing him in darkness. In the next moments, he would have heard a fire being kindled beneath him, and soon he would feel the heat of the flames. In the next seconds, the metal would become too hot to touch and too hot to bear, but with nowhere to go and no part of his body not exposed to the heating metal, Paralus soon began to scream. As the inventor cooked, his screams echoed from the molded pipes of the bronze bowl, creating a sick sadist's version of a bull's bellow. His invention had turned out perfectly. The only trouble was who it was tested on. Fortunately for Paralus, he would not die in the Brazen Bull, though his ultimate fate was little better. Satisfied with the sounds and smells of the Brazen Bull, the tyrant King Phalaris had Paralus pulled out of the bowl, very badly burned, but alive. Then he was thrown off of a cliff to his death. The inventor Paralus had attempted to appease and profit off of an unstable and evil tyrant, and in the end, he paid for his efforts with his life. There is a lesson in there about appeasing tyrants. Pure evil cannot be pacified or reasoned with. Those who would attempt to ingratiate themselves into evil regimes or profit off of the minds of wicked men should beware of the consequences. The story of Paralus is not completely without justice, however. Tyrants were a troublesome lot, and their life expectancy could oftentimes be quite short. After all, who wants to serve an unpredictable, homicidal maniac? For tyrants like Phalaris, wicked, untrusted men who acted impulsively and recklessly, support could never last forever. Soon even the most ardent of his supporters would grow weary of his ways. It wouldn't be long before these supporters, witnessing their rulers' unchecked power and paranoia, would begin to fear for themselves. In time, Phalaris' support drained away entirely, and in the year 554 BC, he was overthrown by a popular revolt led by a man called Telemachus. Toppled from power and at the mercy of his people, the ex-tyrant Phalaris is said to have been hauled before the very brazen bull that had been constructed for him. Beneath the hollow statue, a fire was already being kindled. Phalaris was then forced into the cramped confines of his own brazen bowl, and the latch was shut on him, sealing the tyrant in a cauldron of boiling, searing darkness, and he was cooked alive. So is there any truth to the legend of the cruelty and suffering that was the Brazen Bull? Yes, some. Perhaps our most reliable account comes from the Greek poet Pindar, who lived less than a century after the purported horrors were said to have taken place. He writes of the wickedness of Phalaris and directly attributes the Brazen Bull to this tyrant. Many years later, when the Carthaginians were controlling Sicily, a brazen bull was looted from the city of Agrigento and carried off by the Carthaginians. Though it may have been a piece of history, legend, and a prize of war, the Brazen Bull would not lose its true purpose for many more centuries to come. In the late 280s AD, it may still have been in use as a form of execution, only now the victims were Christians prosecuted by the Roman Empire. As time moved on, however, tales of the Brazen Bull and the horrors of its use began to fade. As the legends, theater, and grandeur of antiquity faded, it gave rise to new forms of sadism, suffering, and executions. Torture would take on a more practical, economic tone as simple horrors began to be introduced. Simple horrors like blindings, hangings, and beheadings. Horrors that deserve their own retelling at a different time. So that's the story of the Brazen Bull. What strikes me so much about this topic is the unknown number of people, innocent or otherwise, who may have fallen victim to such a device throughout all of history. How many people have lost their lives cooking in a brazen bull? Is it 1,000? 10,000? Is it more? Accurate numbers for those victims subjected to the Brazen Bull are impossible to come by. It existed for so long and in so many different places, in so many varying forms, that coming to any conclusion on the matter is not possible. In the end, all we can do is speculate. Hey, thank you so much for watching the video on the Brazen Bull. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a grim, dark topic, I know, but a fascinating part of human history all the same. The moral of the story, appeasing wickedness with further wickedness, is also a poignant one, and a timeless lesson. The history of executions is an intriguing topic, and perhaps one that I will revisit in a future video. I'd like to give a big thank you to everyone supporting the channel. Every like and every comment really do go a long way to helping the channel grow, and if it weren't for you guys doing that, I wouldn't have videos to make, so thank you. Anyways, that's all for this video. I'll see you in the next one.